Hey YouTube, it's me, Brandon Colonel again. The next knife review that I've got is more an overview on the Kershaw Skyline. Now, I'm basically just going to stick more to my opinion of it, since you guys have most likely already seen loads of videos about this. This has been reviewed to death, but I'll still give you my opinion of it. Just a little overview. It's about 3 inches long. 3.125 is what Blade HQ says. Overall length is around 7.375 inches, I think. G10 scales, really lightweight. 14C28N blade steel, which that's actually the same steel they use in straight razors. So it is phenomenally sharp. I do like how lightweight this is. For an EDC knife, I do like it somewhat lighter knife, but when it comes to my tacticals, I really like something heavy in my hand. Just for whatever reason I like that, and especially something like this, which is the ZT-0561. This can actually pull double duty. So I love this as an EDC, and I also love it as a tactical. And there are a couple knives in my collection that can pull double duty, but this is definitely my favorite one that does that. Whereas this one, I would not recommend this at all for tactical. It would definitely work in a pinch if that's the only thing that you have, but I would not recommend this in a tactical situation for anything. It is very quick. I wouldn't exactly call it a rocket or anything, especially out of the box. I had to lubricate the pivot just a little bit, and at which point it does just fly out of the handle. But the problem that I have with this knife in the opening mechanism is, for one, when you first get it, like I said, it's pretty sluggish, and it doesn't want to open all the way for every person. You really have to get used to it in the beginning, and you have to rock back quite a bit with a lot of force in order to get it open on with just your finger. And whereas now that I've oiled it, now it comes out relatively easily, but there's still a problem with it. It loses the oil pretty quickly, and so therefore I just oiled it maybe 2 days ago, and it's already getting slower. So it loses the oil incredibly quickly, which in my opinion, I actually think that Teflon washers, which are what they use in my CRKT, I think that these actually hold the oil better, so therefore it's easier to come open. Whereas the phosphor bronze washers, they don't seem to hold the oil quite as well, so therefore they lose their oiling a lot quicker, and it makes it sluggish faster. So there's different knives that I have that use the phosphor bronze washers, such as the Spyderco Tenacious. And I may oil this every once in a while, but I'm not exactly looking for this to be the fastest flipper I have, partly because it doesn't have a flipper, obviously, but also it comes open pretty easy just like that without me even having to oil it in the first place. I mean, I may oil it every now and again around the pivots just to see what happens, but so far that's working. Don't really need much. Whereas this, basically the only real way to get it open is with the flipper. You can do it on the thumb studs, but it takes a lot more force, and if you don't have a callus built up on your thumb, then that's really going to hurt. I mean, it is really going to be a lot of pressure it's a very tiny thumb stud. That's going to hurt if you don't have any calluses. So the flipper is basically the only real way to get this knife open. So that's just a couple things that I don't like about this. I know that when Nut and Fancy reviewed it, then he was saying something along the lines of you'd be basically a terrible knife collector if you don't have 5 of these. For one, I'm good with just one, honestly. But 2, it is an excellent knife, but it has its problems. It is by no means a perfect knife that would warrant you having any more than just one. I would love to have 5 of these. I would love to have 5 of these. I don't care too much for having 5 of these. This is nothing special. It's not any better than one knife. It's incredibly sharp, I'll give it that. But and it does keep edge retention pretty well. But seeing just how thin this blade actually is, the Blade HQ actually says it is 0.09 inches thick. That is very, very thin. That the tip will barely stand up to anything. It is an incredibly thin tip. Not quite as thin as the Leek, I would say, but this is an incredibly fine tip. And so this is going to be excellent for cutting open boxes and stuff like that, but this is a spear point knife. This is supposed to be able to penetrate things with ease without you having to worry about that tip coming off. I mean, let me pull out another spear point knife that I've got. This is a Kershaw Burst. This is another spear point design. That tip is not exactly thin. Sure, it's not exactly the thickest in the world either, but this tip can actually do some penetrative tasks. Whereas the Skyline, that is far too thin to do anything. But it will work in slashing. Say like you're just slicing open boxes or something like that. I know people who would actually use a Skyline for food prep, which one thing about that is I've noticed that in more humid climates, this will rust. Where I'm at in Valdosta, this is going to rust. So, yeah, there's just little spots of rust. Like even now, it's got a couple little spots of rust where I've missed 2 days. So it's easy for this to rust. And even some of my other Kershaws are starting to rust, even though they're supposed to be stainless. But it's not too big of a deal. I just use a light coating of oil, and it usually keeps everything at bay. But back to the Skyline. I do like the really generous finger choil here. It ensures that you're not losing your grip on it. I do like how streamlined this is. It's just basically straight up and down. This is very streamlined, and in certain cases that's actually pretty good. In other cases, like a tactical, I prefer it to have a little bit more of a curve to it, so it just fits in the hand more effectively. Whereas in the EDC tasks, sometimes you've got to have that straight blade, so that way you can get in something easier and cut, like maybe just cut in a position like this. That's easier with a straight blade than it is with a curved blade. Because this, if I'm trying to do the same thing, it'll still work, but it's a little bit more difficult. And there are times when I've got to do that because, say, I can't reach my hand all the way to the back and cut something like that. So I've got to come in more like that and stab something and cut it out of the way. and a straight and really sharp blade will do that task a lot easier, in my opinion at least. Other people may have differing opinions. Some people may not even know what I'm talking about. It depends on what kind of job you have and what kind of things you need to be cutting all day. But there are things that I do every once in a while that just need something like that. And so the streamlined blades for EDC sometimes just work a little bit better. But as far as other things that I like, I do like the simple pocket design. Sometimes Kershaw tries to do pocket clip designs that are just a little over the top. I mean, I do like this design. It's really interesting, but it's not the most comfortable. That pocket clip, it makes for a really big hot spot. And so whenever you're doing detailed cutting work, then I almost want to just simply take the pocket clip. Because the pocket clip it's not the best. So I just tend to take it off if ever I'm doing some really detailed. And okay, I don't really have many others. The Kershaw Burst. They've also got an interesting pocket clip with the middle taken out, and it's really functional. The middle taken out is just a little weird, but the pocket clip is functional. It doesn't really have many hot spots. Whereas the simple pocket clip design like this, there's nothing to it. It's just basically a bent piece of steel, and it doesn't form a hot spot. It's relatively flat. It's got a piece that's bent up just enough so that it's easy to get in the pocket. One thing that I would recommend for Kershaw doing, though, is they should really put this pocket clip up higher, because that's a lot of knife poking out. And they originally set it for tip-up carry, in which case this much would be sticking out. Now, honestly, that's still a lot of blade for, well, not blade, but that's still a lot of handle for some people, but that's still bearable. This is a lot of knife to poke out. You're seeing the blade, you're seeing the handle, you're seeing the pocket clip, you're seeing a lot. I do like the functionality of the pocket clip itself, but I don't like the placement of the pocket clip. And I always have my knives tip up. So, seeing as I'm forced to carry it that high, that's a little bit of a downside for me. Especially now with how I'm carrying knives, my EDC is in my back pocket. So whenever I sit down, then the knife is poking out this much, and if I'm sitting in a particular type of chair where maybe the back doesn't go all the way down to where the actual sitting part is, then whenever you stand up, then this is going to catch, and it's going to make it really awkward to stand up, because then you've got to basically sit back down, scoot forward, and then stand up, so that way this doesn't catch on the back of the chair. And it's just making it really awkward, and it's not really much better when it's in your front pocket, because then your hand is brushing up against it every time that you swing your arm. And so it just makes it really awkward. So that I really don't like. But as far as how sharp the blade is, I am in love with just how sharp this thing is. It is absolutely razor sharp. And that's just right out of the box is how sharp it comes. Now I've done just a little bit of work just to see if I could get it any sharper. And as always, you can get it sharper. It's actually fairly easy to get a knife sharper. But yeah, it is phenomenally sharp right out of the box. You don't really need to do any work to it unless you just feel like having an even sharper blade than what they give you. In which case, go to town. Another thing that I would like to see is a secondary liner. Right now they've only got one liner, and that's partly where it's so freakishly light. Now, like I said, I do like the weight on this, but I actually would like to see it just a little bit heavier. That extra liner might give it just that little extra oomph that I'm not getting. And two things that could actually possibly make this a little bit more tactical is if they added jimping and that second liner. With that, I actually wouldn't be so opposed to using this as a tactical blade. But right now, as is, the way that they've got the screws in here with the G10, I'd be worried about stripping the screws just completely out of the G10 and just completely ruining the knife as a whole. And because if say you go for a stab and then try to pry it out, you could actually break the knife because you snapped it off in somebody's body, for crying out loud. I would not use this at all for a tactical. If I did, then I would, like I said, it would be a last-ditch defense knife, and I would be going solely for slashing attacks. Whereas if they added that secondary liner, and to make it just a little bit heavier, added a little bit of jimping on the top side, then this would be a lot easier to handle as a tactical blade. And I would definitely carry it as a tactical. But right now, as it stands, it is by no means good enough for that. It is an EDC through and through. One of the good things, though, is that this is made right here in the USA. So that's good for collectors who only buy in America. So, yeah, this is a really good Kershaw design, made right here in the USA. Another thing that I do like is that the thumb studs turn into backstops, which to me give it a lot more strength. And the only thing stronger would be is if they used stop pins and the thumb studs together. That's basically the only thing that would make it any stronger, which I think I've only seen that maybe once, and it was probably one of the strongest stops I've ever seen. I guess that's the best way to put it. But just as far as just the strength of the knife, that's probably the strongest I've ever seen at all. And yeah, I've only seen it once, and it was on a friend of mine's knife, and I can't even remember what the company was, but he showed this knife to me, and like I said, it was one of the strongest lockups I have ever seen. There was no budging in any direction, and he actually demonstrated it a few times of just how much he could pry without a single instance of blade play occurring. And so, like I said, that's incredibly strong. But the thumb studs being used as stop pins, that is incredibly strong, and I really like this design, which is another reason why I end up liking ZT so much, is because at least 9 times out of 10 they're using the thumb studs as their stop pins, and so it makes for a really strong design. And which this one almost had the blade stops and the stop pin working together. The only thing is it's just a little bit off, so therefore it's not quite doing that. They almost had that, and which, like I said, that makes for an incredible lockup. There is no blade play whatsoever when they do that, at least most of the time. There's some that's tried it, and again, they don't quite match up the stop pin just right, but then the lockup on either the liner or the frame, whatever lockup they're using, sometimes it's just not where it needs to be. But yeah, that's about all that I do have to say about the Kershaw Skyline, though. Just an overview of what I said. Really like the sharpness, like the blade steel. The tip needs to be a little bit thicker, but if they add some jimping and an extra liner, and then it would be a phenomenal knife, and I would love it even more, because I just want to see a little bit more weight to it. But yeah, so that's my little overview of the Kershaw Skyline. As always, stay safe.